Hey there folks, this is Justin Nation again with Nindie Spotlight, here to review the NYXI Wireless Switch Pro Controller, and this is it here right now. Um, it's roughly the same size and feel of the standard Pro Controller, as well as usually it's the other third-party competition. It is noticeably lighter than both the Pro Controller and its typical competitor. Um, it, it does risk having more of a cheap feel because of that. It's one of those things that feel lighter. People inherently sort of assume that they may be cheaper. Um, it has that risk, but it doesn't feel so light that it feels fragile. So it could be down to a feeling of taste. The texture is a little bit plasticky, certainly, but it at least has a little bit of texturing, in particular on the back, which does help, lend to gripability, especially if you're playing for a long time, versus like the Pro Controller normally has more of a smooth feel. Some of the competitors, they have different ridging depending on what you're getting. The thumbsticks, that can be a pretty sensitive spot for some things. What I found with this is it's more of a middle of the road kind of feel. The Switch Pro controller itself has pretty tight feel on the thumbsticks. I've noted that, especially over time, but even initially, some of the other third-party controllers, the thumbsticks are a bit on the loose side. Still not, they still recenter fine. I'd say that the NYXI controller, it's somewhere in the middle, where it's still pretty satisfying, pretty tight, and doesn't feel like it's floppy as as you use it to. It doesn't feel like it flops around as you're trying to make adjustments and things like that, which is good. The texture, there's a ridged sort of. I don't know if you can even, probably can't see it. There is a slight ridging on the edge of the stick, versus the Pro controller. It's pretty smooth. There is a more minor texturing, but at least the texturing on the ridge does help with, gripping your thumb as you use it. Though I suppose potentially you could get some Nintendo thumb quicker with some ridging, but nothing. It's not obnoxious or anything. It works just fine. I did find that it connected pretty easily with the Switch for the first time, mostly by holding down the pairing button. I think I just went into where you can choose your controllers, and that made it pretty easy. Just hold down the pairing button, and it didn't have a problem. From that point on, I was able to just hold down, just like the normal Switch, hold down the home button for a short time, and it connects to the Switch automatically. It charges with a USB-C controller, same as the normal Switch Pro controller. Some of the third-party ones use the micro USB. I don't know that it matters much, but just in case somebody is concerned with that. Let's see. So obviously, in terms of its features, obviously it's wireless. It does include Rumble, which not all of its third-party brethren do include it. The thing I would say about it is the default Rumble. I would label it as aggressive. It was pretty strong and heavy-handed. Luckily, pretty easily you're able to make adjustments to. There's a total of 3 levels of intensity. What I would say is that the Rumble itself, it's more classic sort of Rumble, where it's not nuanced at all. At least not that I would notice. It is straight up Rumble when the Rumble kind of things happen. So, certainly, if Rumble is important to you and you're looking for a third party solution, a lot of its competitors don't have that, so that would make it appealing in that way. It does feature, gyroscopic mode, or it features a gyro, so you're able to use gyro controls. I I find that the gyro controls, even with anything with the Switch, much like back in the Wii days, it's all relative. Gyro controls are not perfect by any means. It seemed to be just as effective as the Switch controller. Um, I think both tend to get lost, but actually, I usually put that failing on Nintendo's software that supports it. Like the need to recenter pretty consistently, no matter what you're using. If you have something that's using gyro aiming exclusively, it's just a general problem. Um, so I would say it's at least consistent with the quality of what Nintendo does itself. The When it comes to charging, aside from the fact that it uses USB-C, the the website for the product says that it'll have 8 to 10 hours of charge on a 2 to 3 hour charging time. And what I would say is, I don't think that I've noticed that it's any less effective at holding a charge after using it for hours. Um, on a couple different play sessions, just like a normal Switch Pro controller, it seemed to be fine. Um, One thing I did note is that after letting it sit for maybe a week, it seemed to be better at having retained its charge. Being set off and just off to the side than some of the third party controllers I've used. Um, After a week or two, they pretty much have, they really lose their charge. And so if I'm going to play games with the family, my Friday night, Saturday morning routine usually involves making sure to charge all the chargers or charge all the controllers, because they tend to lose their charge more so than the Pro controller, and more so than I found with this one. Um, just like all third party controllers that I've checked out, or I think even seen information on, there is no NFC support. That seems to still only be a Nintendo exclusive. I don't know if that's something on purpose or if it's a matter of saving money. But yeah, there is no NFC support, so you won't be using your amiibo with this controller. Let's see. In terms of the price, its suggested retail price matches the same as the Switch Pro controller at $70, though I think I usually have always seen it with either promo codes or just straight up on sale for $50 or $20 less. There is something through their website where it appears that they do sort of a bulk discount as well, where the more controllers you buy at a time, you do get additional money off. So, you know, if it was full price, I would wait until I found a sale or a promo code for it, so it's at least cheaper. Whereas typically the Pro controller, I think rarely I've seen them on sale, but typically they stay at that 70 and they never change, just like the Joy-Con, or that's a locked-in price, pretty much. In terms of unique features, as you probably saw every time I turned it back on, it does, whether or not it's a good thing or not, it does seem to want to save your battery, because it will shut off after a few minutes. Even if you're playing a game, like I've had, if I'm sort of not actively playing something, I've had the Switch, the Pro controller become disabled, but this does it relatively quickly. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes total inactivity. I mean, it comes right back really quickly and easily. But I'm in the middle on it. I appreciate that as a power saving feature. Perhaps the time on it could be a little low, but just one of those things to keep in mind. But in terms of other unique features, obviously the LED is unique. In order to, let's see if I can do this one handed. In order to cycle through the different modes, there's a we'll get to it. There's a turbo button on the back, but let's see if I can do this one handed. So if you turn it back on. If you hold down the turbo, and I need to find it, okay. Let's turn it back on. There we go. If you hold down the turbo and then hit the thumbstick, you can cycle through different solid colors. And then I think it's double tap. It'll change through colors with a sort of a breathing mode, and that sort of thing. That's about the extent of it. Usually I just leave it on the breathing mode for the rainbow colors. And I think it's 8 colors that it cycles through with the LEDs. So certainly presentation wise, it is unique, at least for the ones I've checked out. The let's see. Oh, and then they had mentioned turbo button. It's on the back. Oh, and the turbo button is also what helps you adjust the level of intensity for the rumble. If you hold it down, and I think it's if you hit up on the D-pad, it'll change to the 3 different levels of intensity. I would definitely recommend not using the default. Like I said, it is aggressive and probably would drain your battery quite a bit faster than if you put it on lower intensity. Like, and since it's a light control, it actually sort of makes a noise um, when it's on its most intense rumble. It's pretty heavy duty. But anyway, the turbo button, it's easy enough to enable. You just would sort of tap it and then tap the button that you want. So any of the face buttons or any of the triggers, you can turn on turbo. I I can't recall having used turbo in forever, but I know that at least in terms of a classic feature, it was near and dear to some people's hearts, and perhaps there are games where people feel that it is still a still something they want. So a good feature to know that it has, if that interests you. Um, Aside from that, it's overall I would say I'm pretty impressed with it. Um, I I'm still biased. I've been using the Switch Pro controller since day one. I actually had to get a newer one because after I had one on launch, that one like a year ago started finally sort of it just didn't feel as tight and as great after playing way too many games on it. So I'd replaced it. Um, I still I still prefer the Pro controller, and probably given choice, anybody else in my family would prefer using the straight up Pro controller. I'd say in terms of third party controllers, it's a mix. Um, Depending on whether people like the weight of it, whether they like the feel of the thumbsticks, whether or not they like my one daughter likes the one third party controller that's clear and it has LEDs that make the whole thing light up. She just prefers that one, I think. But depending on your tastes, as a third party controller goes, this is a pretty good one. Oh, and just a minor thing. Um, for some of the Pro controllers from third parties, they actually switch the placements of the plus and the home and the minus and the screenshot button. That can be a bit maddening if you're used to the normal placement. So the fact that this one it's consistent with the Pro controller is another very small detail, but it is something I at least appreciate because when you're trying to hit the plus button and you hit the home button repeatedly, that can be frustrating when you're sort of in an intense game and other people are playing at the same time. It can be a bit irritating. But overall, it plays well. The price for what you get for it, um, if it were the full retail price, it being the same as the Switch Pro controller, Nintendo's own Pro controller, that's probably a bit high of an ask. But the fact that you can get it pretty easily for $20 less, puts it right in the zone with a lot of its competition. So I'd say among the third parties, I'd probably give it the edge for the charge, the slightly tighter thumbsticks, which when we've played some games, having them be a bit loose can be a bit annoying. Um, I probably would give it the edge, and I just about forgot. There is one anecdotal thing I would add that was inconsistent, so I can't really speak to whether it's a real problem or not. After my wife and I have been playing the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga for many hours at a time, typically. And one thing we both noticed, because we took turns using this one, after randomly a couple times in multi-hour playthroughs, we would have an issue where very briefly, probably maybe 30 seconds, it would feel like the controller sort of got lost. Like, either there would be a delay or, just something would be going wrong. And then, taking a pause and letting it sit for a moment, it seemed to go away. So we weren't sure what to make of that. And I'm still not quite sure what to make of it because I then, thinking that it's a matter of it getting overwhelmed somehow, played, an hour at a time with some really intense twin stick shooters that I love. So constant use of the sticks, uh, and I didn't have any problem at all. So I'm not sure whether or not that's a function of something to do with the Lego game specifically somehow, which seems unlikely, but um, whether it just has to do with playing for that long or what. Uh, it's an inconsistent problem, so I don't know if I would consider it critical. It is, sort of annoying when it does happen. But again, we've only noticed it a small handful of times over playing with this controller for an ungodly number of hours to check it out. So take that as you will. Like I said, it's just an anecdotal observation. It certainly isn't something we are able to repeat on demand or under any normal circumstances. So take it as you will. But that's sort of summing things up. It's a reliable, generally reliable, pretty good controller. Perhaps a bit light, but it includes some features some of its third-party competitors don't, for about the same price as those same third-party controllers. So it is competitive. I'd still pick a Pro controller, but that's my bias, and I'll spend the extra $20 for what I think is a better controller. But if you're on a budget and you have a lot of controllers to buy, this might not be a bad option. All right, so thank you for listening. This has been Justin Nation with Nindie Spotlight, and I'll talk to you later.